Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Carla Farley, and I am the 2020 president for the Greater San Diego Association of Realtors. We put this on. We know that people are finding it very difficult to deal with this whole COVID-19 epidemic. But our priorities for the Greater San Diego Association is that we remain a resource for you, that we continue to provide information that can help both you and your clients out there. So we've made it a point to regularly update you on the status of resources available. And with that, one of the ones that's been a great deal of frustration and confusion over, I would say, is the loans that are available through the Small Business Administration. As realtors know, we fought very, very hard in our industry to ensure that self-employed and independent contractors, 1099 people, that they would be included in those numbers when unemployment or some type of assistance became available. With that being said, we also know that money has ran out on the Paycheck Protection Program. With the, I think it's like a second round that they're kind of going through right now in Congress, supposedly with some new funds coming available for that, we wanted to make sure and ensure that you guys could have it live and upfront from the Small Business Administration. So again, as when I was just talking to Danny about the noise that's out there, the news and the comments and media, everybody's telling you, do it this way, do it that way. Well, get it straight from the horse's mouth, right? And so Danny will help us today navigate those things, tell you what's the important things you need to know so that when that second round on paycheck protection comes out, those who would be eligible would be able to apply for that and do it with some sort of confidence and ease in knowing that they've done the right thing. With that being said, Danny Fitzgerald, I think about 20 years in the business serving the Small Business Administration. I understand that he also does, is it United States and the Mexican border? So on both sides, but just a ton of knowledge. And he is here with us today. I can't tell you how excited I am to, like I said, just get it from the horse's mouth. So when you have to know what's the right way for it to be done, you don't have to go to channel whatever or the media. We can say the Small Business Administrator. This is the way they told us to do it. So with that being said, thank you again for being here, Danny. We very, very much appreciate it. And I'll tell our members out there, this is what your PAC contribution pays for. It's called advocacy. And so when the National Association, the California Association, and your local SDAR, when we get out there and advocate for you, this is the kind of resources that we can bring to you. So again, we are excited. We appreciate it. And with that, welcome, Danny. You can take it away.
Fantastic. I'm going to share my screen, kind of go through some slides. So I'm happy to be here. I appreciate the invitation from the Realtors Association. So my name's Danny Fitzgerald. I'm with the San Diego Imperial Small Business Development Center. One important thing is I always start out, because things change all the time, is that this presentation is today, April 20th, because it feels like every time I do a presentation, I have to go back and update my slides or change because something new has come about, something's changed, something's ended, or the like. So that's something that's very important. So I appreciate this information. So who are we as the Small Business Development Center? So we're funded by the U.S. Small Business Administration. We're resource partners of the SBA. We are their largest outward-facing technical assistance component, because the SBA, of course, they guarantee loans and then they provide small business assistance. And the primary way they provide small business assistance is through us, the Small Business Development Center. As such, that partnership also includes state programs, and so that's why we're funded by the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. So what do? We provide one-on-one business advising for free, because we're funded by these two primary programs. And we also provide training sessions like this, or on a variety of topics. We've been around in San Diego for over 30 years. I actually work for Southwestern Community College, but we have multiple programs throughout the region, multiple locations, everything from Miracosta College, University of San Diego, to nonprofits like the San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation, to Connect Foundation, to the Asian Business Association. And all of our folks are working online right now, because of course we all have the stay-at-home situation. We call ourselves essential workers that don't have to go to the office, and so that's just fine. We're all able to use our laptops, use our telephones, use email, and be able to assist. Just since the disaster was declared, we've assisted well over 3,000 businesses. We're assisting them in a variety of different ways, predominantly through the 2 different primary federal programs. And so that's kind of what I'm going to focus on today, but there's a couple extra things I'm going to hit on the top. The 2 things I'm going to talk about, of course, are the 2 federal programs, the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Well, number 1 caveat I always like to start out with, I'm not a member of Congress. I cannot change the policy. I cannot refund the plans or anything like this. Also, my job is to assist people. My job is not to change the way in which the regulations are. Can't do any of these types of things. I can merely say what we know the regulations are, help people navigate and help people understand them. And that's really what we're able to focus on. A couple other things that are important to kind of note. Is that obviously if you have staff, I'm sure many people have gone on unemployment. So before I get even into the Paycheck Protection Program, there's some good updates and that I want you to kind of be aware of, and that's called Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUA. It's kind of what Carla was talking about, how independent contractors can be counted for unemployment insurance. And that program is going to be available, the application, it will be available a week from today from the state of California. If you just Google PUA, California Department of Labor, or PUA, California EDD, you can get a good frequently asked questions. It's retroactive payments to March 29th, or when you were quote unquote laid off or your income was wiped out because of the COVID situation, all the way through potentially the end of July. And so that's important to understand, because as independent, if you're an independent contractor, you have to make a choice. Do you want to either use PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, which you can, or pandemic unemployment assistance? You cannot do both. And to me, it really boils down to a math equation. Take a look at what's going to pay you the most, or what's going to meet your needs the most, as well as taking a look at the eligibility situation for each of those. A couple other things that have come about is in the state of California, of course, and in the federal level, the tax deadlines have been moved. Payroll tax deadlines have also been extended. You can apply for that if you have employees. And also sales tax has been deferred. And so different levels of sales tax has been deferred through the state of California. You can apply from the California Department of Tax and Fee Association. In addition, there's the California State Loan Guarantee Program, and that's been enhanced through the disaster situation, where people can get up to 95% of a loan guaranteed, which means a lot of nonprofit lenders are able to lend. And there's some new programs coming out. There was one that we're excited to be part of, that's coming from the County of San Diego, as well as with Acción of Southern California as a great program. There was also the City of San Diego Small Business Relief Fund, hopefully that some people were able to take advantage of. So after that, a couple of quick things that are important to take a look at is, number 1 is to contact your creditors ask for any deferral, especially if you have a guaranteed small business administration loan. So if someone has, for example, an SBA 504 loan, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with the 504 loan program, and those loans are deferred for 6 months for principal and interest. The good part is the SBA is paying the interest during those 6 months. And so the bank is making their money, and the SBA is paying that, and it's fully deferred for 6 months. So make sure, if you have clients that need to contact their creditors, make sure that they're doing that. Or if you have an investment property, or you have a property that you own, make sure you're doing the same things. Also, the Federal Reserve Board a few weeks ago issued a memo to all other lenders to defer or restructure loans during this situation. Most are offering deferrals, but we have seen a few restructure requests. We're helping a few different clients navigate those restructure situations, because that's really what we do as business advisors, is help folks navigate those and go through there. Of course, I talked about the payroll tax, the sales tax, the income tax deferrals, and of course, we're telling people to communicate with their landlords. Don't just say, hey, there's an anti-eviction order, because they really do need to maintain those good relationships, especially since once they are able to get the economic injury disaster loan or the Paycheck Protection Program loan, then they're able to pay their rent. And that's so important, is to keep those lines of communication open. So big important thing here. There is a rash of scams, an enormous rash of scams going on, where there are people that are phishing for information. I've started seeing multiple emails forwarded to me from clients saying, hey, you just applied for a loan with the SBA, and it's from some other location, but we want this information. Basically, they're trying to get people's confidential information. We've seen text messages where it's like, hey, pay me $2,500. I'll make sure you get all the federal programs together. All these types of things you need to watch out for. Tell your clients to watch out for them. These programs are very, very, very easy to apply for. Our services are 100% free to be able to access. We've helped, like I said, thousands of people to be able to do it. We have on-demand webinars walking people through the programs, and so there's no need for them to have to pay anything extra. Of course, there's a number of trusted advisors that they already have, and if they're helping them, that's great. But again, if you know them, but if you've been paying them and you know them before, like I'm paying it, like let's say I was paying and know my CPA, and my CPA submits the applications, of course that makes sense. But if this is someone you don't know or have a trusted relationship, we're telling people to be very, very cautious. And so the Office of Inspector General from the SBA is monitoring this, as well as the San Diego District Attorney. They're also monitoring this. And so these are some very critical things, some critical scams. Watch out. So please tell your clients to watch out for it, and watch out for it yourself. So for all the programs, not just the federal programs, but all the programs, this was even the City of San Diego Small Business Relief Fund, any of the new microloan programs, any other types of programs that may be out there, telling people basically to get their financials together. Long and short is kind of have a draft 2019 tax return ready to go. That's going to be important for you. So they need to make sure they have their gross revenue for 2019, their cost of goods sold, if they do have that. Obviously, if they're a service industry, they're not going to have anything there. And to have the totals for all their overhead, everything from their commercial insurance to their payroll to their rent to equipment leases, etc. Also to have their 2020 financials, in particular January and February, up to date for that same information. All of that is because they need to be able to demonstrate the negative cause and effect, because the programs, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and the Paycheck Protection Loan Program, do require people to honestly certify under the penalty of perjury that they have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 situation. So that's one thing, because there's been reports or rumors where people are getting these loans and they shouldn't be getting them because their business isn't impacted by the program, by the disaster. What's going to happen? Well, that's them. That means that they certified under the penalty of perjury whether or not they have been, done or not. And so that's certainly something that's going to impact them. Besides that, definitely you're going to want to have your monthly payroll expenses. I'm going to talk about this next with the Paycheck Protection Program, and that's why that information is important. So under the CARES Act, which was signed into law, I want to say March 28th, 27th, this is a brand new program that came about. To understand kind of the timeframes, it was signed into law on a Friday, and the regulations were rolled out to the SBA and from the SBA to banks and to the public the next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So you can imagine that that's been truly flying the plane, and building it at the same time. So it has been a lot of questions, a lot of issues, a lot of confusion, certainly surrounding this. But as you know, federal programs, when they roll out, oftentimes will take somewhere between 12 and 36 months for all the rules to come about. This did it in less than 6 days, and there's been continuous change about it. So there's been a lot of those things around with it. So the number one thing with this is a loan from a bank or another lender. Initially, 7A lenders were the ones doing it. Since then, they've massively expanded this program with hundreds and thousands of more lenders that have come online. Everything from credit unions to community banks to banks that hadn't been part of SBA in a long time, to even online lenders that we've actually seen done a very good job, such as PayPal and Intuit. We've actually had some clients with some very positive experiences with them. And of course, you've seen big banks and small banks. You've seen banks that have rolled it out well. You've seen banks that have rolled it out not so well. One common thing, and this is something I'll explain from a bank perspective, is, and I'm not a banker, but just that it was explained to me and it made a ton of sense, is because banks are required to still comply with the Patriot Act and money laundering rules. And so that's why they focused on their own customers, their own lending customers, because they've already identified the person. And they know, so in terms of the Patriot Act and any anti-money laundering laws. So that's one big component, understanding why. what makes someone eligible? You're eligible if you're a small business or a nonprofit, 501c3, only C3s, not C6s, in operation prior to February 15th, 2020. That's a hard cutoff date. We've had some people said, I started my business in March. Is there anything for me? The answer is no. And there's nothing we can do about that. And we feel badly, but there's literally nothing we can do about that. Also, this would be that as long as you paid employees or paid yourself, the owner, as a wage or an owner draw. And so that includes if you're a sole proprietor, an independent contractor, as long as you had some sort of net profit prior to February 15th, 2020. So that's what's critical to understand. So a couple other quick components. This is a program that has an expiration date on June 30th when it's due. The loan amount's based on 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So if my monthly payroll is $10,000, this loan would be for $25,000. In the next slide, I'll talk exactly what payroll is included, but it's basically all the compensation, state payroll taxes, insurance, group health, retirement, but payroll in excess of $100,000 is not included, but up to $100,000 can be included. The big thing, the huge bonus of this program is this loan is forgivable. It can become a grant. It is not a grant, it is a loan that can become a grant. So that's also important to understand. If you took it as a loan, it's a 2-year loan amortized at 1%. So it's actually a really good loan if you took it even as a loan. But you can wipe out this loan if you are able to demonstrate costs that occur during an 8-week period following the disbursement of the loan. That's at least 75% on payroll, and the other 20, and no more than 25% on rent, the interest you pay on a mortgage, or your utility costs. So there's a quick website kind of summarizing PPP and things like this. In a minute, I'm going to talk about the economic injury disaster loan, which is also another federal program. And I get this question asked all the time. Can I have both? And the answer is absolutely yes. Frankly, you should have both because Paycheck Protection Program is limited to a very, very narrow scale and it's forgivable. So you should use that one first, but it is only for payroll for 8 weeks, rent during that 8-week period of time, utility costs during that 8-week period of time. So the odds are you're going to have impact beyond that 8-week period of time. Also, you're going to have other expenses, everything from your general commercial insurance to equipment leases and the like. You'll still need to be able to pay for that EIDL is going to be able to pay for. So what's included with payroll? The payroll is basically, we're recommending you basically take a look at your payroll records for that 13-month period. And the reason for that is then you add all these things up, you divide by 13, that gives you your average monthly payroll. And so that's all the wages, commissions, cash tips, everything's included there. State payroll taxes only, because since there are federal payroll tax holidays, FICA, Medicare, they're not included. Of course, any payment for any leave, but also what's super important is the employer paid portion of your group health insurance, your group retirement. So let's say, for example, you pay an employee a portion of their 401k, or also it does include workers' compensation. It also includes owner compensation in the form of draw or net profit. I'll get to that in a bit more detail in another slide, but basically it's the net profit that you would put on your draft Schedule C for 2019, divide that by 12. That's how you would determine what your owner compensation would be. 2 important exclusions. I will actually talk about the second one first, which again is the $100,000 compensation. So if there's an employee that makes $120,000, instead of calculating it at $10,000 per month, you'd calculate it based on $8,333 per month. Any additional that you would pay them, or you just wouldn't pay them, that would not be included within there. Second exclusion that's also important, especially here for San Diego, is any employee whose principal residence is outside the United States. So if you have an employee who lives in Baja, they are not eligible for this program. Again, not a member of Congress. I didn't write the law. It just is the law. All I can tell you is what's in the regulations. So this is the other one. So this is, I know it's all fine printy because, well, I copied it literally from the interim rules that came out from the Treasury Department and the Small Business Administration. And so the compensation for a sole proprietor or self-employed individual, it boils down to you're going to need to do a draft Schedule C, or whoever that independent contractor is. And this is if you're going to use the Paycheck Protection Program and not use pandemic unemployment assistance. So again, if you use pandemic unemployment assistance as an independent contractor, which is like, let's say, for example, I'm an Uber driver, it would probably make much more sense for them to use it than it would to use anything else, and then to use the Paycheck Protection Program. But if you're well compensated, close to, right around $100,000 or over, then you would get the $100,000. This may actually be financially more beneficial to you than the $600 per week from pandemic unemployment assistance. So what you do is you would do a draft Schedule C for 2019, line 31, the net profit amount. So you would want to get that figured out. And so if the amount's over $100,000, reduce it to $100,000. But let's say, for example, it's under $100,000. Basically, then you would divide that by 12, then that's what it would be. If the amount's 0 or less, obviously you're not eligible for a PPP loan. So this would be your draft Schedule C. And again, make sure that's probably going to be the Schedule C you're going to file, because you'll probably have to use that for audit purposes later on what this loan would be. And so that's really how that's going to be calculated for you. So really that's the key thing, is to have that. And so in addition, you're going to want to be able to show kind of on that last bullet point where it would be able to show how you're getting that income. In other words, if you can show a 1099 you've received, if you can show invoices that you've collected upon, bank statements showing deposits, anything really showing that you gained revenue prior to February 15th, 2020 is also something someone would want to be able to show. And that's for an independent contractor. So again, independent contractors, 100% eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. But you cannot get both the Paycheck Protection Program and pandemic unemployment assistance. You're going to have to figure that out on your own, or we'll assist you in terms of being able to do the math on which is best for you. This is the SBA form. If you go through a lender, they will not use this exact form, but they will request all this information. So I just use this as the template, which is really kind of the information that you're going to need to be able to provide to be able to get this loan. So obviously you're saying what type of entity you are. So if you are a C Corp, S Corp, LLC, if you're incorporated in any way, make sure you have your incorporation documents. Odds are you're going to need to at least have those or be prepared with those, because you're going to want to put both the business legal name as well as your DBA. You're going to want to put the EIN and all of that information. So again, back to the loan calculation. One other is the average monthly payroll times 2.5. But then there's a minus involved as well. So if you applied for the economic injury disaster loan, which I'll talk about next, and received in advance, you reduce the Paycheck Protection loan by that amount. Example, I have 5 employees. My average monthly payroll is $10,000. So that means I would have received a $5,000 advance from EIDL. So instead of my loan being $25,000, it'd be $20,000. And so that's really how that would be calculated. After that, there's a whole lot of certifications and extra information. You do have to list all owners of the company that are over 20% or more. So if someone owns 20% or more of the company, they do have to be listed, including their social security number. So make sure you have that information as well. After that, it's a whole lot of certifications. So these are all things that are important that you answer honestly and accurately, because again, you're certifying this under the penalty of perjury to the U.S. federal government. And the U.S. federal government, just this little piece of extra information, included in the CARES Act, is a lot of money to the offices of Inspector General. So they may be checking on these different types of loans. But if you answer them honestly, and you honestly use it, you'll never have any problems. Just like when you file your taxes honestly, and if you have an audit, it's not really a problem. And so it's the same sort of situation. So these are the types of things that are important. After that, of course, again, you're going to actually certify that everything is completely honest. One thing I like to highlight here is this one right here, the second one on this page, which is the current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. So let's say, for example, I am not negatively impacted by the PPP. I cannot legally take this loan. We actually had a company that they were able to pivot very quickly. They'd initially applied for this loan, but then all of a sudden they're making actually more money than they were in February and January. And so they had to then, when the loan was offered, they turned it down. And so these are the types of situations you have to answer honestly, that at that point in time, when you accept the loan or apply for the loan, that the economic uncertainty makes the loan request necessary. So that's what's important for this. So you will need to certify that honestly. So to get the forgiveness, this is something I cannot stress hard enough or long enough, and that is make sure you keep the most detailed records you've ever kept in your life for anything. And so that is super important. Also, what's important is to understand the timing. So this is how it works. Let's say, for example, I'm a business. I applied for a loan last week before the SBA said these are temporarily suspended. That means then I was applied for, and then let's say today I got my approval from my bank. And so now that means the bank has no more than 10 calendar days to fund the loan, to disperse the loan to me. And so the moment I get that loan is when the 8-week clock starts ticking to be able to pay my employees. Again, at least 75% must be for payroll expenses, and your payroll expenses need to basically be what your average payroll was before, within a very, very slim margin error, say a less than 5% variance based upon that. And so that's what you have to be able to do that. So what we're recommending to people is, if you furloughed employees, let's say I'm a gym, I furloughed my employees, there's also no way they're coming back to work anytime soon. Guess what? You still pay your employees as though they were working. Call it pandemic leave, call it COVID-19 leave, what have you. And so that's something that the intent of this law is to pay people as though they were working, but because of the COVID-19, the public health crisis, they cannot work. So that's what the intent of the program is for. Not necessarily that they're actually working, but that they would be paid for their regularly scheduled time. So that's what's important, because at least 75% must be for payroll and no more than 25% on rent, mortgage interest, or utilities. So we're telling people, save very, very detailed records. Payroll reports. If you use a payroll provider, keep that, make sure you're getting that information. If you do it on your own, make sure you keep those QuickBooks or other types of accounting records very clear. Bank statements, canceled checks, etc. Have all of that information, because they still have not written the rules on how the forgiveness or what documents are going to be included. We're anticipating this to be something that you will want to have more, not less. It's always better to have more information than less information and be lacking and then lose that forgivability. So a couple quick examples, make sure you keep some payroll reports, things like that. The other program is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So before it was PPP, this is EIDL, PPP and EIDL. So you'll hear these acronyms. Again, federal programs, they like acronyms. So this is a loan, and this is not forgivable, with the exception of the advance that could be up to $10,000 that would have been applied for March 30th or later using the simplified application process. I'll show what that looks like later. Again, both the PPP as well as EIDL have been temporarily suspended. I know that. We all know that. But we're anticipating that they're going to get refunded this week, Congress willing, and it sounds like a deal is very close, and we're hoping these switches get turned back on later this week. But of course, we're talking about this as though we're going to get turned back on. So again, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is a loan for up to $2 million for working capital. So this is all your overhead types of expenses. This could be other bills. This could be vendors that you still owe money to. This could be commercial insurance, equipment leases, things like that. All of those types of things that you may owe money on. The loan is 3.75%, 2.75% for nonprofits. All nonprofits are eligible for this, 501c3s, C6s, and the like. And the term could be up to 30 years. Doesn't mean it's going to be 30 years. Actually, most of the loans we've seen offered are 10 to 15 years. And so that's really what they are. And so since it's much broader in terms of its working capital, that's why PPP and EIDL work very well together. Because get your EIDL loan, pay those expenses that PPP is not eligible for, use PPP on all its forgivable expenses, and then continue to use EIDL as needed to fill in the gaps otherwise. All of these loans, the payments are deferred for 6 months, so you will not be having to pay. And so if you end up getting through the disaster and you have some extra money, just pay it back. wipe out the principal, and that's a way in which you can avoid some of those penalties. A couple of terms. So anything under $25,000 does not require collateral. $25,000 to $500,000 may require collateral. Anything over $500,000 will require collateral. So that's an important caveat. So the may bucket is for, we're not sure exactly what their credit reviews are, but they will not decline a loan for lack of a collateral. You just may get less money for your loan if you do not do it. And they will take real estate as collateral when it's available. This is a loan directly from the U.S. Treasury. So this goes directly from, so this is a loan from the U.S. federal government to the business owner. And the application is here at covid19relief.sba.gov. It's temporarily suspended. Hopefully Friday, it'll turn back on based on the timelines that we're hearing. And again, no cost to apply. So you do not need to pay somebody to do this. If a trusted advisor is doing it for you, great. But there's no cost to apply. These are very, very simple. There's also no obligation to take the loan. So we're recommending people to apply. Yes, it does create a hard credit check, but that's the only negative thing it necessarily does to you. It does create a hard credit check. And so you can, of course, if you have an existing disaster loan, and that actually has happened to a number of people in Northern California who were impacted by the fires. So when someone goes to that particular page, the covid19relief.sba.gov, they will come to this, again, when the switch is turned back on. So the first thing is disclosures. Similar to the types of certifications and the questions of eligibility, the same sort of thing on the PPP, the same questions would be here. The number one business here that would be ineligible is, of course, cannabis-related businesses, because that is still considered illegal by the federal government. So both the PPP and this would be ineligible, as well as certain adult entertainment businesses would also be ineligible. But other than that, pretty much everyone's eligible. And so this is where you would apply through that. The second page, the business information, is very similar to the PPP. But so in other words, you still need to have your incorporation papers, know your EIN, need to know when the business started or when you bought the business. And if those dates are different, make sure you have both those dates different. You'll also need to be able to say your total gross revenue from February 1st, 2019 through January 31st, 2020. Again, the 12 months is funky. February 1st, 2019 through January 31st, 2020. Same time period, you'll need to know the cost of goods sold. Again, if you're a service-based industry, that could be the answer could be 0. And that's really the critical information you need to have. Also on that page, if someone is a landlord, you can put the cost of lost rents. We've assisted a number of folks that are landlords, and they can put the lost revenue from lost rents also on that. It's not a required field, but that is something specifically they can put on there. And so that's where the information they would want to have on that business information. Next, on the business owner's information is similar to the PPP. Anyone who is an owner, you need to put down. However, on this one, it has to be anyone with any ownership percentage. And not just do you need to know their social security number and their percentage of ownership, you also need to know where they were born as well as their citizenship status. Does not mean they'll be declined. You could have an owner that is a non-resident and you will not be declined for the loan. But it is information that they're asking for. So that's something you'll need to know on the business owner's information. If you're a nonprofit, it's kind of funky, ask us, we'll be able to walk you through that. On additional information, this is actually where you would have applied for, or you will apply for, the up to $10,000 advance. On this first page here, on the second page really, the business information, you're going to indicate how many employees you have. That will then lead to the calculation for the $10,000 advance. The advance does not need to be paid back. The remainder would be a loan. So if I have 5 employees, my advance would be $5,000. If I have 50 employees, my advance would be $10,000. If I have 10 employees, my advance would be $10,000. If I have no employees, but just me, the owner, my advance would be $1,000. So that's kind of the balance that you would be able to strike in terms of that. Last but not least is the summary. Review the summary, because the number one reason these things are getting delayed or kicked back is errors. If you didn't put your correct EIN, if you didn't put your correct social security number, or you had that type of information incorrect, if you put an invalid address, you put a trade name, all those types of things are things that can delay it. And so make sure that you've done that. When this turns back on, that's when people are able to reapply who have made particular errors. So those are a couple of things that are super important with it. Question I get all the time is, how do I check my status? Number one thing to know is there have been over 3.5 million applications for this loan. So certainly that they're trying to deal with a pretty hefty volume. So the best thing to do is actually call the 800 number. Again, it's like calling the IRS. You'll be on hold for a long time. We want to manage that expectation, but this is the only way, the best way to get information. You can email, but most likely they're going to tell you to call. So that's the way to be able to do it. They can look up the loans based on your social security number, your EIN, or ideally your application number. So that's something that's also important. One other thing I want to talk about with EIDL is prior to March 30th, there was the old school application where you would have filled out a Form 5, a 4503T, and a couple of other forms and uploaded them to the SBA. Those are the ones we're seeing processed. We've actually seen loans dispersed that were part of that. So it's good to see that these loans are going through, getting processed, and actually happening. So that'll continue to be. If you applied under the simplified process, they're getting to those. They're wading through each of those, and odds are you will have to complete those additional forms and have that additional information as part of the requirement. So last but not least is use us. We are the San Diego and Imperial Small Business Development Center. I'll show my website here again in a second. You go there, you click request counseling, and that's how you are able to then contact us. Because if you call our phone number, you'll get a voicemail. You'll have to wait for someone to check the voicemail and call you back. It'll actually take longer than if you just go to our website and complete the request for information. That'll get you that'll help you get into our system and get you an appointment with one of our 80 different advisors that we have throughout the San Diego region. We've been around, like I said, for 30 years. We assist people to start business. We help them from ideation all the way to exit. Probably a number of you have encountered us in the past. We're really here to help and really be able to provide all sorts of different types of assistance. So again, San Diego SBDC.org is our website. You go there, you click request counseling. You can also go there and click on trainings and workshops. You can see an on-demand webinars for both the PPP program and EIDL on how to apply. And that's really an easy way to kind of learn a number of those different things that you can do. So that's my presentation, but I do see some questions rolling in. So we can go ahead and get to those. Ryan, do you want to read them off, or do you want me just to read them off? Ryan's muted, so I'll take that as I'll read them off. I don't know the answer to this one. Has any agent or broker been able to attain funding through the PPP program? I honestly don't know if anyone has gotten dispersed from it yet. We've seen a very few businesses get their actual disbursements yet, but we did have a couple of smaller businesses that have received it, and they did get some loans. Ones that we're seeing actually really come through quickly is actually PayPal. We had some folks that had some pretty solid success with that, and they were able to do that. Another question is how to come up with the average payroll number amount on the PPP. I did answer that. So I think a couple of things to look at, because you're also asking about the S Corp on your taxes. So again, similar type of thing is you'll need to have a draft 2019 for that, and for what your owner net profit would be. In other words, what your owner draw would be from an S Corp, and then you would divide that by 12 to determine what your amount would be. And so that's really what you would look at. So it's both the profit and loss. If you're doing a Schedule C, it's that, I think it's line 31, what the net profit is. If it's your setup on an S Corp, whatever that the particular disbursement would be to you as an S Corp. The next question is the PPP application through Wells Fargo does not have an option to apply as an independent contractor. That's Wells Fargo. They made that choice. They have that ability to make that limitation. And if that's the case that they've done. A couple of ones I'd suggest, like I said, PayPal, Intuit, and another one called Lendistry. It's called lendistry.com. But they are a nonprofit lender, just like CDC Small Business Finance. So they are also very good. I don't work for Wells Fargo. I can't control what they did. The banks have had the latitude to implement this as best they feel fit. to keep up with the regulations that they do have to do. The next question is, I submitted an application with Bank of America for the PPP, uploaded all the documents, BOA requested on April 8th, have not heard back. Email them. Email and contacted the bank. Hopefully you got an email from a verification from there. What we did see, and I can't control this, each bank made their own choices as to what they've submitted to the SBA system. Because the way that this works is, those of you who have probably processed 504 loans in the past, probably with CDC Small Business Finance or somebody else for your clients, you know that how it works is the lender receives the application, does their initial underwriting, then they submit it to the SBA system. It's called E-Tran, and it's in a software system called COBOL. Yes, if you're my age or older, you know what COBOL is, but it's that old. So it has been around, it really hasn't been used since like the 80s, and it's still written in that same language. But then the SBA receives that information, then they then they give the approval and give that back to the bank. And so many banks cherry picked, I guess is one way to do it, or they just chose different ones to submit when to the SBA, and not all that were in the queue got submitted. So for that, make sure you check back with Bank of America to see what that really would be. Question on the slides, recording be posted. I think Ryan said he's recording this, and I'm sure he'll email that out to everybody. So let's see here, those are done. Another question, for an employer that pays subcontractors and they're not able to pay them. So you can receive PPP, but only for yourself. The independent contractors, they'd be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance, and that'd be the best way for them to be able to get any sort of financial assistance, because you can't pay them. You cannot pay it. So PPP is only for owner or owners and W-2 employees. That's all. So it is limited only to that. The next question is on the payroll. So it would be the gross plus state taxes plus health insurance divided by the average monthly amount. So basically, again, what it is all the total compensation, state payroll taxes, group health insurance, group retirement, and workers' comp over 12 months. Divide that by 12. And that is your average monthly payroll. You take that, you times it by 2.5, and that's the loan amount. The other one is, if I'm the sole employee of an S Corp, do I provide corporate tax amount on my personal schedule to calculate monthly payroll? Whatever your disbursement would be as an S Corp, really in other words, what that net profit was of the corporation and that you're receiving as the sole owner of the S Corp. That's really what you would want to take a look at. So the last one here, let's see here. Oh, nope, it's not the last one, a bunch more. Now I'm up to 33. See, I was banging through them. Self-employed Schedule C, how do you measure payroll costs? Again, basically your line 31 net profit, do a draft Schedule C for 2019, get your net profit, divide it by 12. That's how you get your average monthly payroll. And then you'll need to be able to demonstrate revenue. That could be a bank statement showing deposits for that same time period. That's what you would really be able to do. It only allows to pay for yourself and your rent or utility. Any sorts of other insurance, that has to be paid for EIDL or some other program. PPP cannot pay for that. Next is, if you don't bring back furloughed employees, will any of the payroll expense still be forgiven? No, it won't. You have to bring people back. It doesn't have to be the same people. You have to bring the same positions back. Your payroll has to be within 5% of what your average payroll was that you're claiming, as well as keeping approximately the same full-time equivalent employees. Next is, can a sole proprietor without payroll still apply for PPP, even if they haven't seen a drop-off in revenue? No, you can't, because you've not been negatively impacted by the economic situation. So that's what that situation would be. For the PPP, as an independent contractor realtor, are your commissions considered payroll costs? Whatever you're calling your net profit. So I'm sure from those commissions, you have business expenses. And so that's your gross revenue or your commissions, and your net profit is what you put on line 31 of your Schedule C. Do you count agents working on 1099 as employees? No, you do not. How do you submit the application? The PPP would be through a bank or a lender. Work with your own bank. If not, like I said, there's some others out there, and you can certainly find them. Again, for some small ones, we're seeing some success with Lendistry, PayPal, Intuit, and a couple of others. Do you need to reapply for EIDL if you applied on the first run? Depends on when that first run you're talking about. If you if you applied prior to March 29th or prior using the old format, you will not receive the advance. You would have to apply under the simplified process at covid19relief.sba.gov to be able to get the advance. So my suggestion is if you're not sure, call that 800 number, be on hold, and find out what your status is. Next is, you understand the owner's draw would not count towards wages because they may not be part of payroll and payroll taxes. There's new regulations, new rules. They do count, just as I explained. I'll share part or all of my presentation. I'll PDF it and email it to Ryan so he can share it. What about unemployment? Again, Google pandemic unemployment assistance and EDD, and you'll find all the FAQs on it. The unemployment insurance for independent contractors in California kicks off on a week from today. That answers that next question. Same thing, that's the next site for the PUA. What if I'm an independent contractor in two separate industries? Doesn't matter. Again, you're just going to use your Schedule C because you're still a single business or a single person. If I own a hair salon and I'm a realtor, can I include both income? Again, it's the net profit on your Schedule C. Same thing, two businesses, two Schedule Cs, basically, but it depends if you have two EINs. So really it's gonna base on if you have two businesses and two Schedule Cs. If you have two EINs, you can apply because it's gonna be based on the entity, which is the EIN, which is what you're gonna be looking at. So that's really what you're gonna go for. What can I tell you about PUA? Not much more than I've already said. It's at least $600 a week from March 29th through the end of July, and the application will be available in California on April 28th, and it will be retroactive. When can we apply? What will we need for unemployment? Again, I don't know what exactly they're going to require. Again, I will send out that link to Ryan, and he can forward it on. He did record it. An S Corp, one employee business. I think what you should do is apply for both PPP and EIDL. Lost rent on my rental, include that on your EIDL, and that's certainly what you'll definitely want to apply for. So an S Corp, do I post my income? Cost of goods sold is zero. So no, cost of goods are not your expenses. Your cost of goods sold are like your wholesale. So let's say, for example, I'm a restaurant, it'd be all the ingredients. If I am a reseller of books, it'd be the books. If I'm a printer, it'd be the cost of paper. But if you're a service industry, I'm an accountant, it's not my rent, it's not my overhead. The answer would be zero because I'm a service-based industry. Can I apply for EIDL if I did not profit in 2019 as a realtor? So I was in the hospital recovery. You do have to show revenue in 2019. That is what is required. I'm a sole proprietor, filed joint taxes with my husband. Do I include him as an owner of a business? Depends on how you have it for, if you listed him as a joint your DBA with the county, probably. If not, you would just still have your Schedule C. For your PPP, your bank needs a business bank account. My recommendation is go to a different lender. I have two jobs, which I lost one in December 2019 on unemployment now. Not sure what the question is. Independent contractor, closing 2 deals today. After that, no business lined up. So no, again, so what it's going to be based on is your revenue for 2019. So as an independent contractor for PPP, do a draft 2019 taxes. That's what it's going to apply for. So that answers Deborah. So again, you do as a draft Schedule C for 2019. Do I know anything about the $10,000 grant? That's the advance on the EIDL. So it's up to $10,000, and it's called an advance, but the reality is, yeah, it's a grant because you don't have to pay it back. So what's the best thing to apply for if you're an independent contractor, realtor, you don't have a team, you're not on payroll, but you have over $100,000 of lost income from deals? I would say, so again, what you're going to do is want to do the math on this. If you've lost all your revenue, you are eligible for either pandemic unemployment assistance or the PPP, not both. So do the math on that. If you've already applied for unemployment and were denied, it's because pandemic unemployment assistance had not come out yet. That got confused, and that's my understanding from the state. And that becomes available next week. So if you were denied because you're only an independent contractor, you can apply on April 28th. That will be retroactive to March 29th, or when you lost income. So if you lost income on April 15th because you had a couple of deals still going through, then that's when it's retroactive to, and it's good all the way through the end of July. So that's what you're going to want to do, is take a look at what's the best route for you for those options. A couple more, let's see, we got a few more questions. Became an employee at a facility before the company closed. Independent contractor. Best way to do probably is, because you can get both unemployment. I think PUA probably is going to be your best bet for this situation. If you're an independent contractor, but again, you're going to kind of want to do the math, take a look at what's going to be best for your situation. That's why we recommend, if you have some of these real complex situations, get an appointment with one of our business advisors. How do we know if the contractor gets paid? You would ask them. That's the only way in which you'd know. They're a subcontractor, they're an independent business, is how you'd have to consider that. Can you pay for unemployment independent contractor if you already had a second job for which you're unemployment on? I believe you can, but of course you should have been claiming that income on that while you were still getting unemployment insurance. Yes, if you're a broker or if you're self-employed, you can still apply for PPP. If you're an independent contractor, the commissions you earn consider payroll. Again, back to the commission question I answered a few minutes ago. That's whatever your net profit is on your Schedule C. Completed the form online with the SBA. I assume that's the EIDL. Did not get the confirmation. My suggestion is you call the 800 number. Give them your social security number, your EIN, get that confirmation number. That's what you would want to do. So if you applied for EIDL a couple of weeks ago, SBA did not, they ran out of money to process new loans. They didn't run out of money to process old loans. We've seen that hundreds of thousands of dollars getting dispersed ever since they made this announcement. So you do not need to apply again. Can you apply for EIDL and PUA? Yes, you can. You cannot apply for EIDL and you cannot apply for PUA and PPP, but that's what's important. And then you cannot use EIDL to pay yourself. You can use EIDL to pay your business expenses. So again, you cannot use money to pay for the same thing. For example, I cannot claim unemployment insurance and have income elsewhere and just not report that to unemployment insurance. That's considered fraud. So you wouldn't want to do that. Started as an independent contract realtor in June 2019, haven't sold anything. Again, you have to be able to show revenue for any of these programs. What if you're an employee with W-2 income at another company and an independent contractor as a realtor? So if you have not been laid off, you're probably going to want to file, that's a complicated one. I'd have to know more details on that, depending on whether or not you still are having revenue from your other W-2 job. Correct. PUA is eligible, you cannot apply for that until April 28th. That's when it comes out, or April 27th. If you submitted 2019 taxes and you owe money, is that true? You don't have to pay until what you owe until July 15th. That's my understanding. I don't work for the IRS. I don't really know exactly how these extensions are, but that's how I've understood it. What's the cost to consult with one of my business advisors? That much, zero. It's free. PPP, you have Airbnb. Airbnb, the revenue, that's what really not going to be except on the EIDL as lost rents, and that's really the only way in which you're going to be able to replace that. So that's the main way in which I see that, because it's kind of funky unless you have that and you're able to demonstrate that revenue for 2019 and show what that particular net profit is. If you live in Florida, where can you get information if you own business with 0 employees? Again, Google Florida Small Business Development Center, and they'll have a whole lot of information. The same thing, they're my counterpart for Florida, and you'll be able to get that. You have income still on the W-2, but real estate income's affected. Probably your best one is to apply for the PPP on just your real estate income. So there, quickly we'll mull through all those questions. Couple of things that are, yeah, so we're able to get all that. And so I appreciate this. Ryan, thank you so much. I see that we kind of got through all the questions here. Oh, wait, a couple more popped in. If you're a realtor and you apply for PPP, how do the funds get forgiven? Again, you have to demonstrate you paid yourself. So again, detailed records. So my best bet is you would write yourself a check for that amount for 8 weeks. So whatever that 8 weeks, so basically your 2019 net profit, divide that by 52, multiply that by 8, and pay yourself that amount specifically from the loan. Call that your payroll. Cash that check, put it in your personal, pay your home expenses, buy groceries, what have you. That's what you would want to be able to do. And you claim a portion of your home and utilities. Where your office, if your office has been closed, that would not be part of it in terms of it, because it's a new situation. It would be only if that was your office in 2019. That's my understanding on how the home office works. Certainly talk to your tax preparer in terms of how that will affect your 2020 taxes. So thanks again to Ryan, to Carla, to the San Diego Association of Realtors. You know, I appreciate being able to get on here. Again, my website is sdivsbdc.org. I'll put that in here real quick into the chat box, and you are certainly welcome to go there. You click request counseling, and that's how you're able to receive our services for free. So again, I appreciate everybody getting on. I see Carla dropped off, so I will just say thank you to everybody. Thank you to the invitation. Again, Ryan will be recording this and be sending all this information out. So take care, stay safe all, and be well.